Hello, friends of Sudoku, and welcome to this short presentation of my favorite way to solve classical Sudokus, and that is without the use of pencil marks. It's not because I hate pencil marks, it's because I think it's more of a challenge for my brain cells, and it's also, I think, a big help for training yourself to think logically. I've always been a big fan of logic, and that's why I prefer to play chess and Sudoku. Of all the board games that are there, chess and Sudokus are my favorites.
Chess.
Sudoku is easy.
So here is a medium level puzzle by sudokuexchange.com. Some of you may be starting a puzzle like this by entering pencil marks, such as there's a 5 blocking down here and a 5 blocking over here. So you would enter perhaps a 5 here and a 5 here. And immediately you would now try to find a 5 for block 9. And you see that a 5 blocks over here and a 5 blocks over here and a 5 blocks over here because you found these two 5 candidates already, right? So 5 is blocking like this. And now you realize, oh, but a 5 needs to go in this square. And the pencil marks helped you find this 5. I have realized that if you have solved enough Sudokus in your life, you don't really need these two pencil marks. And the reason you don't need them is that, let's just remove all of this again, that once you notice that a 5 pencil mark might go here and here, before you even enter these pencil marks, have a look over to the right and look at the 5 blocking over here and look at the 5 blocking down here. And you immediately see that the 5 needs to go in this square. And now you would look upwards and you can see a 5 blocking up here and a 5 blocking over. You know now that one of these must be a 5. So instead of entering a 5 pencil marks here, just leave it. You can easily remember that a 5 will have to go here or here. And even if you forget it, you just have to look at these two 5s and you're immediately brought back on track with these two 5s. Same thing goes for the 7s. You might be tempted to look at the 7 blocking up here and the 7 blocking over here, making a pencil mark in these two squares. But you really don't have to do that to find the next 7, do you? Let's just look at the 7 blocking over and look at a 7, possible 7 blocking over like this. Look at the 7 blocking down. Here's your 7. So just the mere fact that you would plant a couple of pencil marks in these two squares enables you to find the 7. If you take a look at the 9 blocking over here and the 9 blocking up here, you know that a 9 must go in one of these two squares. And I know it's tempting to just enter pencil marks for the 9. What I'm suggesting is that you try to not do that because it's going to slow you down and it's also going to make for a very messy puzzle if you are not disciplined. I don't find it difficult to remember that a 9 must go here or here. And even if I do forget, it's so easy. There are only 81 squares. So easy to reestablish the fact that a 9 must go here or here. And by the way, while we were talking about the 7s, I did notice the 7 blocking down here and the 7 blocking down here. And I did see the 7. So entering a 7 here is just a matter of doing it. You will sometimes see me solve puzzles where I seemingly forget about entering a digit. It's just because I know that that digit will have to go in a particular square that I sometimes just leave it and go off in another direction because something else in the grid looks interesting. I know I can always come back to a square that is an obvious digit. You would also be tempted perhaps to put a pencil mark for a 1 in these two squares because you know that this 1 is blocking over here and one of these squares must be a 1 eventually. But really, what I'm suggesting is that it's not necessary because you can easily see that a 1 can't go here, and there are only 2 available squares for a 1. It's also easy to see, without using pencil marks, that a 9 must go here or here. How can we see that? Well, this square is blocked by this 9. This square is blocked by this 9. The only squares available for a 9 in the bottom row are these two. There's another way you can see it. If you look at the 9 blocking down here and the 9 blocking down here and the 9 blocking over here, you know that this square has got to be a 9. So just entering a 9 here finds you a 9 for one of these two squares. Another reason why I enjoy solving Sudokus without using notation is that I often sit in a car or on an airplane or on a bus with a newspaper, and a grid is there for me to solve. So instead of using a pencil and making a mess out of it, newspaper paper is usually very thin. I try to just use a ballpoint pen and no pencil marks at all. And I think that most newspaper puzzles can be solved this way. It's also a very satisfying feeling, at least for me, to be able to solve puzzles without using a lot of help from notation.
That's so satisfying.
Pencil marks aren't bad. I'm just trying to encourage you to try and solve puzzles without using pencil marks. You will feel more empowered, I'm sure. So let's quickly fill in some of the obvious digits that are still missing from this puzzle. We got a 5 blocking over, and we got another 5 blocking over and 1 blocking up. So a 5 must go here. This 8 blocks up, and we got a couple of 8s blocking across. So this is an 8. An 8 blocking up here and here, making this an 8. And now these two 8s block across here, making this an 8. The last 8 is going here, and that's it for the 8s. The 9 blocks over here, this 9 blocks up, so a 9 is going to go in this square and therefore in the square here, because this 9 is blocking these squares and these two 9s are blocking all of these 4 squares. So a 9 must go here. And here's a way to figure out where a 9 must go in this bottom row. And we can do that without using any pencil marks. We can see that a 9 blocks over here and a 9 blocks over here. So this is going to be a 9. And therefore, this must be a 9. We don't even have to enter the 9 here. The 9 blocks up here, and we got a couple of 9s blocking across. So a 9 for the top row has got to go in this square here. So let's punch in the missing 9 here. And now we got all the 9s and all the 8s for this puzzle. Here's another little pattern that we can use. We know what these 3 digits must be. They must be a 1, 2, and a 3, because they're the only ones missing from row 4. So without even looking at the 1, 2s, and the 3s, I always start looking at these 3, because they cannot be a 1, 2, and a 3. There must be a 4, 6, and a 7. And armed with that knowledge, I start looking across here to see if there's anything here that can help me sort out these 4, 6, and a 7s. Maybe there isn't, maybe there is. And it doesn't really look like it. All I know is that this is a 1 or a 4. So I quickly turn my attention to something else. The next thing I would probably do is look at these 3 squares here. They need to be a 2, 4, and a 3. And without even looking at the 3s and the 4s, I can see that the 2 is blocking this square. This 2 is blocking this square. So I know that this must be a 2. And as soon as I find this 2, I look across here and I see that a 2 must go in one of these 2 squares. I also know that this 2 blocks this square. So a 2 has got to go here and therefore here, because I'm immediately looking up to see if there are any ramifications to finding this 2. And there is. This is the only place where we can place a 2. Now I revert back to the 2s and I look across here. I look across here. I look down here. That gives me a 2 for this square here. And this 2 blocks up, this 2 blocks across, this blocks down, and that is our 2 for box 4. The next thing I do, and I do this immediately, I look at these 3 squares. There must be a 1, 3, and a 6. I know now that a 1 must go in one of these 2 squares, and therefore in one of these 2 squares. But I don't know anything about a 3 and a 6. So now I turn my attention to these 3 squares. I know now that this is a 1 in one of these two squares. The other two must be a 3 and a 4. Now I have to be creative because I can't place the 3 and the 4 and the 3 and the 4 yet. But I'm noticing that these two squares must be a 1 and a 3. 1 and a 3 for these squares. And that leaves only this square. And the only value that can go in here now is a 4. So a 4 blocks down here. Therefore, a 4 must go here. And we know now that this must be the 1 and this must be the 3. The 3 blocks over here, I always look up and down and to the sides after I find a digit. And this 3 blocks everything except for this square, which now must be a 3. And before I even start thinking about this square, I look at these two. And they must be a 1 and a 6. So now I look over and I can easily figure out that this must be a 4. And now I look up, I see that this is a 4 and this is a 4 blocking, so a 4 must go here. Now I look down, 4 here, 4 here, 4 here, 4 must go here. And I immediately look left and I see that this square must be a 4. Now I look right because there's only one square left in this grid and it's got to be a 3. Now I look up, only one square left. Again, this is a 1. What I usually do now is I look at these two squares because the fewer squares you have, the easier it is to isolate which ones will contain a certain digit. In this case, I'm looking for a 7 and a 6. I can't place any of them, so I move on. Now I go to the top chute. The chute of 3 by 3 boxes up here. This box 1, 2, and 3. I'm looking at the 4s blocking over like so. And I know that a 4 must go in this square or in this square. I immediately look down, I see this 4 blocking up. So this is a 4. We now have all the 4s, all the 8s, and all the 9s in this grid. Now I'm looking at these 3 squares because 3 squares, they are usually very manageable. And I'm looking for a 1, 3, and a 6. A 1 must go up here somewhere, and a 3 must go here or here, but I can't say anything about the 6. So I stop looking and I go look elsewhere. These 3 and this square must be a 3, 5, 6, 7. There's a 7 here, so one of these must be a 7. This cannot be a 5. So a 5 must go here or here. But the 3 and the 6s, they are still being elusive. Now I look at the top row. I know we need a 1, 7, and a 5. This 7 blocks here, this 7 blocks here. This must therefore be a 7. And now, because I just looked at the 7s in this row, and I remember that these two could be 7s, now that I found this 7 up here, I immediately go down and punch in a 7 in this square. These two now must be a 1 and a 5, and there's a 5 already blocking this square, so this is a 1 and this is a 5. A single empty square now has got to be a 3, and I immediately look left. There's a 3 here and there's a 3 here, which has no bearing on anything, and there's a 3 blocking up, so this must be a 3. And therefore this must be a 3 and this must be a 3. See how easy this is? You don't need pencil marks for most of the puzzles that appear in newspapers. This is a 1 and a 6, and I don't know what to do with those, so I immediately look elsewhere. In this case, I am looking for a 5 and I'm looking for a 6. And since I can't find any here, I'm looking upwards and I'm seeing that these two squares must be a 5 and a 6. And in this case, the 5 blocks here making this a 6. Therefore, this must be a 5 and this must be the 6. And this 6 blocks here, so this is a 6 and this is a 1 that we were looking for before. The 1 blocks here, making this a 1 and this therefore must be a 5. Only one square left to fill in row 3, and that is a 6. Now we know that this must be a 6 and this must be a 1. The 6 blocks up here and the 6 blocks down here, this blocks over, so this is a 6. And it doesn't take a genius to find out that this square here must be a 7.
Well, this doesn't take a genius.
And therefore this must be a 7. These must be a 1 and a 2. We got a 1 blocking up here, so the 2 goes here and the 1 here and the 1 here. This also must be a 2. The last digit in this puzzle is going to be a 3. With this short demonstration, I hope that you may pick up some motivation to try using these analytical skills on easy to medium hard puzzles. And I think that you will find that after a while, this is how you think about solving a Sudoku puzzle. There is no shame or no problem with doing as much as you can notation free and then resort to pencil marks or notation if that will help you solve the puzzle. What I'm advocating is to try at the outset to solve a puzzle without using any help at all and to see how far it will take you. When I began solving puzzles this way years ago, I really got tired because your brain consumes 25% of your body's energy. And if you start thinking about puzzles this way, you will probably get tired. At least I got very tired. Nowadays, this is just my style of solving. I can't solve all puzzles this way, I have to admit, but most puzzles can be solved by using standard logic. And to me, at least, this is the most satisfying way of solving a Sudoku. It may not be for you, but there you have it. I hope that you enjoyed this and that you will come back for more. Thank you for watching and bye for now.